to another episode of Healthy Living. My name's Cole, I'm your host. And here we are again at Thanksgiving. Oh my God, the work that you've got in front of you. I feel sorry for you already. You've got to deal with the turkey, the stuffing, the vegetables on the side, mashed potato, of course. You've got to deal with possibly the dessert, and you might actually go off and buy a store-bought dessert, or you might make pumpkin pie. But you know what? Think about it for a second. Your family's going to sit there and eat themselves stupid over Thanksgiving, which is really not very healthy at all. So, let's have a think about what we might be able to do instead, right? Now, not only are they going to be sitting there eating stacks of turkey, mountains of mashed potato, heaps of stuffing, but you want to give them a pound of sugar on top of that just to finish them off, right? Come on, that's not cool. So, let's have a look at what we could be doing. I went up to the store and I bought myself a Honey Crisp apple. Look at that. That's delicious. Smell it. It's fresh. It looks great. It's gigantic. And we're going to mix with that a banana. We're going to call it the banapple. So with the banapple, we're going to be able to provide for your family a healthy, non-sugar, heart-safe dessert. Let's have a look at how we make it. Welcome to the banapple, and you'll see here the essential ingredients: bananas, and a set of some fairly fresh bananas and some not so fresh. And in actual fact, the not so fresh are probably more favorite in this particular recipe. A collection of spices: allspice, banana extract, coconut extract, cinnamon powder, imitation vanilla. I didn't even go for the real stuff. I've gone for what you'd find in the cabinet on an everyday circumstance. Some sweet flake coconuts, right? They're not even sweet, they're just dissected flakes. Some tropical fruit mix, some margarine, and our apples. And, you know, when we consider fruit salads, they only go so far when it comes to a dessert-style recipe. And what we're really after is a super healthy, super flavorsome, and very different kind of dessert. A dessert that we could sit on a dessert plate and be suitably proud of. And this is it, our all too famous banapple. So I'm soaking the tropical fruit mix in pineapple juice, and the tropical fruit mix is a mixture of a little bit of coconut, some banana, some raisins, some dates, some papaya, some pineapple. It's a nice mix, and it'll be nice and sweet with the extra juice there. I have a plate where I have my spices laid down. It's my work plate, and we'll show you how that works in a moment. And I have my raisins soaking in apple juice so that they'll have their own distinct, or a little hint of apple in their flavor as well. And I've already started preparing my apples. Now the first thing that you do with the apple is use a fruit peeler and just peel off a little bit of the skin around. Now you notice that I've kept some skin and I've exposed the flesh in other areas. The next thing that you do is then you start to dig out the core. Now the idea with that is that if you've already cut it out a little bit, it's not difficult to get the core out. And you'll see here I'm even able to do it with one hand while I'm holding the camera. Right? And I've already started to dig the core out. So there's the core that's come out. And I would continue to spoon that out, leaving a nice hollow center. Now what I'm trying to achieve at the end of the day is this. This is the apple that's going to be baked. And you'll notice here that it's now nicely sprinkled with cinnamon, and it's ready to be put in the oven. And it'll have a very nice cinnamon allspice flavor to it. Probably go light with the allspice because it's a little bit bitter. But you'll kind of want that contrast, and obviously apple and cinnamon is always something that's delicious together. And then what we'll do is we'll work on after I get the apples prepared, we'll work on the banana filling. A couple things to note. You may end up breaking the side of the apple. Now don't panic. In this case, I put a couple toothpicks in there to hold it together while it bakes. The other thing is make sure that you leave the bottom on, right? You want to be able to fill this area up with the mix that we're going to make for the filling. So be conscious of that. In regard to my work plate, you notice that I've just laid my spices all over the plate here. And the apple's wet, so that means the spices stick to it okay. And then obviously as I sprinkle more on, I don't want to spill that all over my counter. It makes it a lot easier in terms of keeping it at one spot. So that's not a bad thing to consider too. But it's not really something you need to. So you can see here, I'm brushing the cinnamon into the open slices of skin and making sure that's really sitting in there, and that will stay with the whole bake and flavor the apple a little bit. I would suggest you don't add sugar to the cinnamon. I know it's tempting and it tends to be a tradition, but I don't think it's necessary in this case because we'll have enough of the sauce flowing over the sides of the apple where it will be more than sufficient and sweet enough as it is. So once I've brushed or pushed the cinnamon into the open slices here, or the open slots here, now obviously I'll just sprinkle it over the top, okay? So that's how you would actually take care of it before you put it in the oven. I've got the oven preheated at 350 degrees, which I think is a nice bake temperature. They won't take long to bake like that, and they will also cook all the way through, soften. What we're really after is a nice soft, flavorsome bake in terms of the apple. And you'll notice likewise too, I am sprinkling cinnamon inside the opening as well to make sure that that's getting all the way through on both sides. So I now have my 6 apples ready to be baked. And so I've placed my large soft bananas in here in a little bit of water, and the harder, fresher banana I've just cut up, because these soft ones, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't use them in a fruit salad. I wouldn't use them in cereal. I might use them in a blend or something. And this is not a bad way to make use of them under these circumstances. Now that I've got everything softening up, this is the time when I will start to add in my other ingredients. And we'll start with, say, for example, the margarine and vanilla, just to see that we get a little bit more flavor going on here. Now this has only been simmering for a few minutes, and you'll see here the banana's pretty much gone. It's mostly broken down, and I actually do want it to break down a little bit further, so I am kind of mashing them as I'm hitting them. I've added in my vanilla and my banana and coconut extracts, but not too much of the coconut. You don't want it to be bitter, and you don't want it to boil too much, otherwise you're boiling off the flavors and the essence that come with these. I've added about 4 or 5 tablespoons of margarine, or actually more like these kind of tablespoons, right? So probably about 3 of those or 4 of those, just to give us a little bit more body and to add a little bit more of an oil to it, which in actual fact enhances the whole thing considerably. I'm about ready to add in my dried fruits. Now the dried fruits have already been soaking for quite some time, so they've already begun to soften, and they're very pliable, and obviously they'll soak up and soften even more once they're in the bowl. So you can see here, even the dried banana, which is typically very hard, is already beginning to soften a little bit, which is good. The raisins are very pliable too, and if you are really concerned, you could let them soak a little bit longer. I don't want to add the juice. I don't want this to be too runny. So the first thing you might do is just get the juice off the top before you add it into the mix. Now this has been simmering for about 5 minutes, and you can see already how thick it is. And the raisins are already a little bit larger. They're soaking up the moisture. That's why you don't want it to be too runny. You want a little bit of water in the pan for the cooking of the banana and that sort of stuff, and you don't mind the margarine being in there to give it a nice syrupy, oily kind of, a bit of a saucy sense to it. The banana's broken down, so it's really perfect. We don't want it to cook any further, because cooking it further is just going to boil away the essence and any more fluid, and it becomes a little bit too thick and unmanageable. So at this point in time, that's off, right? And now we'll wait for the apples before before we go any further. So after about 35 to 45 minutes, the apple is baked through, and you'll see the cinnamon's still coated on there nicely. I put a little bit of display on the bottom of the plate for presentation purposes. Over here, if we have a look at the sauce is nice and thick, but not overly thick. If you want to thin it, add a little bit of apple juice, maybe a little bit more margarine. You still want it to be a little bit oily, no matter what you achieve, right? So, and you want it to have a nice syrup substance to it. You'll see all the fruits have expanded nicely now. They've soaked up the juice. The raisins are nice and thick. The papaya, you can see there. Some of the coconut as well. It's very, very tasty. There's nothing like vanilla and banana. I mean, just the smell of it is just sensational. And of course, apple and cinnamon as it's baking, the two together, what can go wrong? So let's put it together and let's see what it looks like. And there you go, our banapples ready to be served. Now this is hot, perfect for a Thanksgiving dinner. There's no reason why you couldn't have this chilled on a very hot summer's day as a chilled dessert. I mean, it's versatile, it's tasty, it's all natural, there are no sugars added, and the only bad thing in it is probably the margarine. So it's a good, healthy dessert, and very, very tasty. Let's have a look at what it looks like when it's cut open. Okay, so let's have our first taste. You see here I've sliced a little piece off, right? And let me just have a taste of that and see what that tastes like. I'm quite excited. Oh my God, that's delicious. It may not look like much, but it is nice. As I said, extremely healthy, perfect Thanksgiving dessert. No sugars, no added sugars, all natural. The only thing that's not natural about it is the margarine. And you can keep back on that if you like. And it's the kind of dessert, too, that could be nicely chilled and served on a very hot summer's day. It's perfect. Enjoy. Healthy living. The banapple.